So shooters and reloaders out there, Fortune Cookie 45 LC coming to you from the hot lead zone. And this video is all about some comments that have come in from David Lantz, L-A-N-T-Z, and also Vengenace early. And they're asking about case annealing. Now, they note that I don't do any case annealing, and they're wondering why I don't do that. And it's all about the 5 times reload before you have to do the case annealing. That is, if you want to prevent case necks from splitting and get more reloads out of your brass. Well, here's my Savage Model 11 VT in .308 caliber, and you know that I shoot Hornady brass and also Lapua brass through this rifle. And with the Hornady brass, I've got a great load that is using Fireform brass and gets groups around .458 inches with 4064 powder and Sierra 168 grain match bow tail hollow point bullets. For this video, let's concentrate on the Lapua brass. So you see from this box, Lapua packages the brass in real nice boxes. And so what I've got here is 90 Lapua cases that are being in use in various stages of firing to work up loads for the Lapua brass. And I've got 2 more full boxes of 100 in reserve, which will be also processed as time goes on when I get the loads worked up. So when it comes to annealing cases, when the factories make the brass and they're doing all the drawing of the brass casings, starting out with a little slug of copper, and they draw it into a cup, and then the cup gets longer, and pretty soon it starts taking shape as a cartridge case. Well, along the way they have to anneal the brass, because when they do all that drawing, they have to keep that brass workable, and annealing is how they do it. For reloaders, annealing is very important, because when you fire these brass casings about 5 or 6 times, what happens is the brass here on the neck and shoulders becomes a little bit brittle, and you'll start getting case neck splitting, and the brass starts getting hard, this kind of thing. So we need to anneal to restore the brass here in this area to allow us to get more reloads and not have the brass fail on us. So as I was telling David Lantz in my previous experiences in reloading, that the recommendation was when that started happening, you needed to anneal, and the way you did it was you took a pan of water, like a ½ inch of water, then you heated up the neck and the shoulders with a torch until it just started glowing, and when that happened you knocked it over into the water, and that's annealing the cases. Well, it turns out that that's not the current way that's recommended to do it, and some good videos are available on the YouTube on how to rotate the cases using a electric drill and a socket. You put the case into a socket, and then as you slowly rotate the case, it turns, and then you go ahead and use a torch. And then the idea is not to get this to glow at all. You want to just see the brass change color right to about there, which is where Lapua actually already does the annealing, and you see the annealing mark there. So once you reproduce that same annealing mark, you take the heat off, because you don't want to overheat the brass, and that causes you to actually overdo the annealing and make the brass actually too soft. Now, Thorzak 777 has an excellent video on annealing. And even though his video is featuring a machine that does the annealing for us, turns out that you want to use the tip of the blue flame on this juncture of the neck to the shoulder. Hit it there as it's kind of turning, and about 5 seconds is all you need. Plus the water quenching is not necessary. Now these points Thorzak 777 brings out very nicely, Dave, in his video. That's Dave. Anyway, so we can do our own annealing. There's not anything hard to do about it. So you only want to see the color change, and then there's no need to water quench. And Dave brings these things out in his video. So why don't I bother annealing the cases? And here's why. What you see is 25 rounds of loaded ammunition right here with brand new factory Lapua Brass, the Sierra 168 match bullet, and the 4064 powder. Turns out to be 44.7 grains. But it's 25 rounds all ready to go, and I can shoot this to about 0.69 or 0.70 inches with reliability. And what that means is I've got 200 more rounds, well 210 more rounds that I can load. Now once I fire this for the first time, I'll have fire form brass, and then all 300 rounds will be loaded up to the load of my choice and fired an additional 4 more times. So that's 4 times 300, another 1,200 rounds, for a total of about 1,500 rounds of ammunition fired by the time I process these and fire them all 5 times each. That's 1,500 rounds. That's a lot of shooting, really, unless you're going to go and do varmint shooting. That's a lot of shooting. Now I'm much more likely to shoot a lot more 223 out of my Remington 700 heavy barrel rifle that's shooting groups in the .4 range with Hornady brass. So why don't I bother to anneal my Hornady brass? Well, the Hornady brass isn't that expensive. And by the time I've shot it 5 times, I'm kind of like ready to use new brass. And sometimes if you're shooting brass off ARs and stuff, it gets beat up pretty bad by the time you fire it 5 times also. Well, I don't mind using new 223 Hornady brass after 5 reloadings. However, I might consider annealing. Why not? So it turns out that after I process my 308 brass, this is Lapua brass, which is a lot more expensive brass. You're looking at about $1 a casing for this. So if I can get 10 reloadings out of one of these, it'll bring the brass cost down to 10 cents a shot. If I don't anneal and just throw the brass out and get new brass, I'm only getting 5 reloadings out of one brass casing, or 20 cents a round for the brass cost. So it's kind of attractive. I might go ahead and anneal cases after I've fired all these 5 times. So for David Lantz and also Vengenace early, yeah, I think you got something there. With Lapua Brass, I might very well go ahead and do my first annealing, and that's after 40 years of doing shooting. Basically, Lapua Brass is something that I haven't used before because I didn't see any need to get brass that good. Although Nick, the bench rest shooter friend of mine, tells me get 200 rounds of good brass. Winchester brass has served me very well for many, many years of shooting, and that includes 25-06 for varmint shooting. We go through a lot of ammo varmint shooting, and also Winchester brass when I was doing competition in high power. That was very popular brass in those days, and really enjoyed using the Winchester brass. And in my case, the brass casings got beat up from the AR bouncing off the concrete and walls and this kind of thing. So after 5 reloadings, I wanted new brass. So no annealing for me back then. So thanks to David Lantz and also Vengenace early for bringing up the annealing, and also to Thorzak 777 for actually his video on annealing. I think I'll be doing some annealing, but that's down the road after I've shot 1,500 rounds out of my Savage 11 VT rifle. It's going to take me a while to get to doing that because, after all, I shoot a lot of handguns along the way and a lot of shotgun slugs and this kind of thing. In the interest of expediency, I might very well go ahead and shoot 20 rounds of this Lapua brass 5 times each, so that I've got brass that I can go ahead and anneal. And that might be very good to be able to do a video on that. Well, so even doing it that way will take 5 trips to the range to do the shooting, and then that'll be a bit of a delay in being able to get a comment reply to David Lantz and Vengenace early. So that's why we want to do this video first, to let you know that this is the formulative idea on this and my conversion to a case annealer that I wasn't before. But you get the idea. We can get a wooden block that's nicely mounted and firm, stable, and have a little V cut in there where the brass casing will just sit in the V, and the flame will be right in the right spot, and then you just rotate the case for 5 seconds, watch for the color change, and when you get it down to about there, you simply just back the little wooden platform off the flame, and we're done. Do the next one. So we'll see about that after I get the 20 cases fired 5 times each. Bye for now.